So this week on the Any Given Run Day podcast, we have a woman of many sports at a very high level. From tetratra, I knew it. We're going again. I've been practicing this all the way through. Right, one more time.
If you mess it up this time, though, I'm going to town. Aoife, pronounce it for him.
Triathlon.
Tetrathlon.
Aoife, pronounce
Tetrathlon.
Yes.
Tetrathlon. Take two. And it gets only worse from here on my end, and Aoife knows where we're going with this. A woman of many sports at a very high level, from tetrathlon to pentathlon to becoming a triathlon junior national champion, second in Ireland aquathlon national championship to CrossFit athon, sure why not? And now the Irish Hyrox female pro record holder. Aoife Faye, pick a sport, please. How are you getting on? And welcome to this week's episode of the Any Given Run Day podcast. Eric, I'm out of breath.
Thank you, guys. I'm delighted to speak about the journey. So thanks.
Aoife, great to have you. But more importantly, I would pay money for you to come back on in a week just to hear Sean say all them sports again. That was amazing. If nothing else happens today, I had my entertainment there with Sean. Look how no one can see it who's listening, but Sean's face has gone so red right now after that introduction.
Don't even think I can edit and save that one, guys. I don't think I can edit and save that one. So Eric, you're going to have to take over for a few minutes in that one. I'll get my composure in that. That's a phenomenal list, Aoife, by the way, what you've gotten into so far.
Some people pick up a sport. Some might, try a dabble hand at tennis, or if the rugby's on, we'll try rugby. Some might get involved in athletics. You took on a lot of sports to start out. How did you start doing so many? A lot of people fall into triathlon or fall into something else. How did you start doing the maximum, and where brought you to that, I suppose?
Yeah, so when I was 11, I got into the sport of tetrathlon. And tetrathlon is a subsection within the Irish Pony Club. So it's not an Olympic sport, and it's kind of like the athletic section within that organization. And so, a lot of people would focus on the horse riding side of within that federation. However, I was just interested, as soon as I found the tetrathlon bracket, that's just where I wanted to be. And I just took to it. I loved the swimming. I loved the running. I enjoyed the horse riding, but I honestly never liked relying on anything or anyone other than myself to compete. And which is why I ended up not choosing pentathlon in the end. But I suppose, I just took to it. And I very quickly focused solely on that sport within the federation. And tetrathlon is not, as I said, an Olympic sport. So pentathlon is kind of a natural progression if you are serious and you want to continue on. So yeah, it was definitely my starting point, and I got a lot of competing, and we went abroad, got to go to Australia, got great, amazing experiences.
Can you tell us what sports are involved, and obviously at 11 years of age, what kind of commitment was involved?
So tetrathlon, tet for 4, obviously, it's swimming, running, horse riding, and shooting. As a junior, you shoot with a rifle. As a senior, you shoot with a pistol, or I think now it's air pistols. So yeah, I think at the beginning, we were in the on the Loud tetrathlon team, and it was it was kind of supposed to be very friendly, but I was just never going to be at that. I from the beginning, and I have a twin sister, and I think we kind of felt like, I have an older sister, and I think we kind of felt a bit like we're both very competitive, and we kind of just put our heads down and we just loved the training. And I very quickly found my competitive nature, and it became probably evident to people around me that I was more intense than the other children at the time, and I just couldn't change. That was just who I was. There's a massive social part of that within the Irish Pony Club that I just I just wanted to train and compete. And yeah, so at the beginning, commitment wise, like I was just going, like a few times a week to training, but I lived with this, oh, I just wanted more. This wasn't enough. And then I got really frustrated at that age that there wasn't a swimming club in my area, and very stressed about it actually, because I cared and I wanted to reach my potential. And yeah, so it wasn't like I really built from there. And yeah, it naturally increased the amount of hours I was training. And then as I looked beyond that sport to what Olympic sports are there, then I really nailed down and got working with some coaches.
How was that from obviously 11 years of age? Like family competitiveness is there. And I suppose parents listening are probably like, my two 11-year-olds are competing with guns. What can
Yeah.
possibly go wrong? When you're moving on up into that competitive nature and all these sports and obviously at a young age feeling that, I suppose, anxiety around everyone else is getting better in the pool. I don't have a pool. And then moving into that kind of Olympic category and coaches, at what point in that kind of transition did you think this is for me? I want to be an athlete. Was that what it was meant to be for you in that transition into that kind of Olympic category? And how did you find, probably looking back, and it's a good one, I'm always curious, that coaching at a younger age, how did that affect probably your abilities now, I suppose, in the formation years?
Yeah, so I think like when it comes to competitive natures, and I have been thinking, yeah, I have thought about it a lot, like it's just who I am. And it really is, I think to live the competitive life, like to be a full-time athlete, it has to be you. You can't, for me, it's not like a decision I make, oh, I'm going to focus on this. It's more like I'm not going to be fulfilled unless I live this through. Wherever this goes, who knows, but on a day-to-day basis. And I tried life without competition and just kind of, trying to live the simpler life. And I, I'm just not made for that. And I don't think I wouldn't have been fulfilled unless I got back into competitive sport after I took a few years out. So I do think I was always the same. I feel the same as I did back then. And I think yeah, it's just about finding something in the physical world, I guess, that kind of aligns with your internal world. And so I, yeah, and as time's gone on, I see more of myself that's more and more true, that it's just in you. I think it's not really a decision. There's no willpower to keep me at training. That's there. It's managing everything else. So yeah, I'm definitely the same as I was back then. In terms of
And
coaches, oh sorry, go ahead.
yeah, no, I was just going to say, and in terms of, obviously that's a coach's dream. When you have someone that enthusiastic and that competitive, you can work with that and mold that into an athlete. Again, how was that for you at that age, and at what age were you introduced to that kind of high level of coaching?
Yeah, so as I said, I was quite a bit frustrated at one point when I knew there was something in this that I wanted to really apply myself to. And I started communicating that to my parents. And I think a lot of parents would have probably seen it anyway. And so I suppose that era of tetrathletes, we did get a great team together, and we actually won the Loud team. I was on the Loud team. We won the Irish championships. And so my drive, definitely, we pushed on, the expectation. And yeah, so I just kept pushing basically. And as I realized that the training being offered in the Loud Tetriathlon Club wasn't enough, I started joining clubs. I joined a running club. I joined Dunleer Running Club, my local club. I actually joined a swimming club in Dundalk, and then eventually went to the NAC in Dublin. to get some really good training there. And so that was probably the difference, where I started pursuing the individual clubs then, which ultimately led me to get involved in Tetrathlon. I think coach wise, I kind of feel like I've only got sorted now, to be honest. Got my coaching situation sorted. Dave Malone in the NAC was a phenomenal coach at the time, and still is. I think he's still there. So when I moved to the NAC and I only got a year of training there, that was really beneficial for me to be working with him just on my swimming. But I did attend Talent ID Day for Triathlon Ireland, and that's where I got exposed to Triathlon Ireland coaches. I didn't really work with anyone too personally. I got to know coach Stephen Delaney, who was very helpful at points, and yeah, so I think that was my first exposure to, you know, coaches who were involved in elite sport when I got involved in with Triathlon Ireland.
To go from them, you must have had, you said in the start of the podcast that you went traveling and stuff with the sports, stuff like that. So your family must have been very encouraging for this competitive atmosphere and competitive nature you had. You said you went to Australia with this as well?
Yeah, so I think my dad he shot for Ireland back in his day, and we talk about this all the time. Like, I think my mom is still trying to understand me, but my dad definitely gets the, you know, the focus, and no, they're very supportive. I think, yeah, like sport, honestly, growing up, it was a lifeline for my teenage years, to be honest. I Yeah, it was kind of a form of, it's what got me through some really difficult times growing up, and with my dad got very sick. So it was honestly something, it became very important, and that no matter what was going on around me, that I just made training, because then I felt like, when no matter, even if the house felt like it was falling down, I was keeping up a responsibility I had to my future. And obviously not knowing what the future would be, but once I made training, it just was like everything else, I'd get through everything else. So I'm very yeah, triathlon, especially that time, was very I'm just very grateful to have had it, and it makes me very, yeah, just like I just care about my training, and because I know what's got me through. So yeah, it can be.
And it's one thing as well to kind of probably not knowing what it was at the time, but understanding that in times of uncertainty, consistency in one element of your life can be that lifeline, or the kind of monkey bar effect, where you have to keep one hand on something and you'll eventually grab on with the other. And sport, I think, is that for a lot of people. And when
Yeah.
sport was so big for me at 15, 16, looking at, could I be a professional footballer? Could I make it here, there, you know? And
Mm.
it's an unusual time, and you're trying to balance education, you're trying to balance all the other stuff that goes on in families at the time. And it's, I suppose, keeping that consistency in one thing can really, like, it's one, a distraction, and two,
Mm.
probably develops you along with other stuff. If other developmental things, like obviously your dad being sick, can have a negative effect on certain parts of your life. And people probably don't realize how important it is for younger people in sport to develop. And we talk to so many people on this podcast about resilience and
Mm.
you know, learning how to deal with adversity. And definitely when you're taking on triathlon, you're dealing with a lot of adversity, you're dealing with a lot of training and a lot of consistency. When you look now towards you as an adult and an adult athlete, do you still think, again, we're talking about the formation years, that resilience started from then, and you tap into some of that even still?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I think recently, as I for the first time in my life, I feel like I've found my right path. You know, I mean, all paths lead to the main road, but I kind of see every other path as like a back road, and now I'm on a main road. And it's taken all this time to get here. And so looking back, for sure, that, like, oh my gosh, even getting to races, back then it took a lot for me to just get to races. And my dad brought me everywhere, even when he wasn't well. And it means, I think when you look back and see what you got through and how much something helped you, it feels like something you have to take care of. And I definitely back then had to take care of that. And now, if, when whatever I'm going through now, because I got through that, and it added so much value. Like I said, it was a lifeline. You can feel quite protective over something now, and I still feel like I have to constantly watch out for, I think we're the only people that will look out for our dreams and our biggest goals in our life. And all along, I think, I felt like the little protector of that. And but definitely, I never forget that time. Yeah, no, they are the forming years. And yeah, but I still feel the same about training. Like, it was always there before, after. So I think that was probably a raw ingredient that I probably just always had, that focus for training. Yeah.
Looking at your resume and paper, we talk about like triathlon junior national champion and all these other events and stuff. When you look back at all them, and talk about your training growing up there, do you focus more on the training and the day to day and the keep the discipline side of things, or does certain events pop into your mind first?
So I think at the minute with Hyrox, you have to be on the ball with entries because the tickets can be really hard to get. So I definitely would have what are the absolute races that I want to do and make sure they're sorted. And then, and that wouldn't be like too many in a year. Recent races I've done, they were actually, I just got asked to do 2 doubles races. So that was like the tickets were got. But yeah, I think you're constantly, as an athlete, trying to, especially because I'm working full time, you're trying to focus on manage the micro details and the macro. So it's a constant juggle between making sure your year is sorted and your entries are in, but also that you're keeping on top of your daily responsibilities.
So people listening to this, Aoife, have heard the word Hyrox once again, and they're like, what is this thing that keeps showing up on this running podcast? But as many people have said, and a lot of endurance athletes have said, and you've kind of alluded to, is endurance sports in your younger years have led to this main road, which seems to be suiting you now. How did you hear about Hyrox? What was it to you when it first arrived on your doorstep, and how did you get involved in it? And obviously, what path has it led you down now?
So I heard of Hyrox, I think it was on YouTube or Instagram for sure. And I was at a strange time in my life when I actually went to university to study biology and do triathlon. And I came home and I actually took some like 2 years out where I was just taking a break from competing, kind of seeing what did I want to commit my life to, type of thing. And I ended up deciding, okay, I think I'll give triathlon another push. And while I was during that time, I remember where I was sitting out in the conservatory room, and this thing came up. And the funny thing is, 2 weeks before that, I actually remember I said to my brother, I said, I just wish there was a sport that mixed CrossFit and triathlon. I actually said that to him. And 2 weeks, I think it was 2 weeks later, this thing pops up on my phone. And it was like an instant decision. It wasn't even decision. I just knew that I would do that. And like, I didn't even have to decide. And I got very like, oh my gosh, this is what I've been looking for. And but the thing at the time, I had just started a master's, and I as I said before, I just wasn't fully ready to say to let triathlon go, because I was halfway kind of getting ready. I think it was almost the summer, and I'd done all this training, and so I said, okay, right, realistically, it's not my time yet to do this. Also, Hyrox hadn't come to Ireland, and I couldn't afford to go to the UK even to do it. So, and like I said, I was just starting a master's, so I knew it was just a matter of time. And the summer after I just finished my master's, I found a CrossFit gym in my town, and which is SKF, and I'm still training in SKF. And I just kind of wanted to get back into physical, like functional training. And their classes were great. They're seriously intense, like if you want them to be. And the day I got there, one of the guys mentioned that they were actually, I think I inquired about Hyrox. Do you guys do Hyrox? And he actually said, yeah, and a group of us are going to Barcelona. And so from there, like 2 weeks later, SKF became a Hyrox affiliated gym. And yeah, that was it then. I started preparing for my first, which was actually 3 months away from when I joined. So I didn't really have much time, but just got straight into it. And yeah, I've never enjoyed training. Nothing, no training I've done before can really compare to how this training, this style of training does now to me in terms of enjoyment factor. So that's great.
Aoife, before my next
Aoife,
question, did you compete in the CrossFit Open before joining that gym?
I went, so I actually had done, sorry, I had done CrossFit. So I did tetriathlon, then pentathlon and triathlon, focused on triathlon seriously for many years. And then I got a scholarship, triathlon scholarship to the UK, but actually left that team after 2 years
Oh.
because I found a CrossFit. Yeah, I was really burnt out basically. I just wasn't happy. And I went back. I took a summer, I came home from university, and then I found this CrossFit gym that was on the street I was going to be living on. And so there was a 2 week period before I had to return back to the squad, where people were just, students were settling in, and it was the end of the off season. And I think I got to my apartment at like midnight, went to this CrossFit gym at 6 o'clock that morning. And I I will never forget that day, because it was just everything I was looking for at the time. And the gym and I still, every time I go back to the UK, I go to CrossFit Forth Valley, because I still have some of my best training memories there. And so it was just like a whole breath of fresh air. It was everything I needed. And the gym, at that CrossFit gym, actually focused on kind of like, there were basically Hyrox, it was basically Hyrox training. And for 3 years, I didn't go near a competition. I didn't want anything to do with competing. And that was before I came home and then got into Hyrox. So I had CrossFit experience. And at that gym in the UK, I think I did do the Open, but not competitively. I don't know, did I do the full thing? But I did do the Open, yeah, last year here in Ireland for the first time. So
Aoife, Sean probably knows what you had for breakfast, so yeah, he has a
No.
good Aoife timeline.
yeah, I'm surprised you asked about the
And
Open.
did you have a coffee this morning with 2 sugars?
The reason I asked for the Open is this: we've done over 250 episodes of the podcast, and people have their biases in different things, whether you're into marathon runs, Ironmans, and stuff like that. But because you've had that experience in CrossFit and in Hyrox, I know social media is not always true. It's either you're in one camp or the other, and you've crossed between both at
Oh,
times. So that's really where I'm going with this. How do they both
um,
compare? How does a CrossFit Open compare to doing a Hyrox event?
okay. So when I started CrossFit in Scotland, in CrossFit Forth Valley, I, like I said, the gym it wasn't really like pure CrossFit where, you know, pure CrossFit is, to my understanding, you know, it's a lot about power and speed. I'm not built like that. You know, I never was, you know, extremely fast and powerful. You know, I come from an endurance background. So they did the CrossFit gym there. Trevor, the owner, he would have done a lot of the sessions were like Hyrox training, and that's why I loved it so much. So my introduction to CrossFit kind of felt like Hyrox, and I kind of just avoided I just had no interest in one rep maxes, so I just didn't go to those classes. I just went, you know,
fair.
like I just went to, so I kind of made it Hyrox, and then I was adding my own running on, because see, for CrossFit, for me, at the time, it was everything I needed, especially because they had the kind of endurance. The gym focused on longer CrossFit style sessions. There wasn't enough running for me, and I didn't have an interest in one rep maxes and all that. So I did change it to suit me, and like I said, I did more running. So eventually I realized what CrossFit really was, and that obviously it's a high skill based sport, and you need to be able to do well. You need to really enjoy weightlifting, and I really enjoyed the gymnastics. I did gymnastics growing up, so that's something I would happily have, you know, committed to and got better at that. But yeah, you definitely need to love the weightlifting, and I love cycling a barbell. I love thrusters. It's just the pure weightlifting. I wanted to just be out running, you know, or jumping over a box or burpees. That's all I wanted to do, really. So it was a great introduction. Like the gym in Scotland they still do endurance Sundays, and like that was like just my favorite session of the week, because it was a full hour of just, and you could be cycling a barbell, and there was a load of barbell complexes, but there was a lot of running involved. And so looking back, it was basically Hyrox training. So when I got to the second SKF, the second CrossFit gym I've been a part of, I was always in, I just went to the CrossFit classes. It was all geared towards Hyrox, basically. And there was a moment where I did consider, I was like, maybe I could get behind this CrossFit, you know, sport. But as soon as I started progressing in Hyrox, it kind of ticked all the boxes for me. And I still, you know, I like I said, I love, you know, cycling a barbell and it being integrated into workouts, and I love strength training. So, but I think at the minute, Hyrox is ticking the boxes for me.
It's more of a natural progression from triathlon.
Sean, you're just
Yeah.
raging you didn't know she was gymnastics champion Community Games
I
2010.
hadn't got that in the intro. I had it. If it had been gymnastic a thon, I would have had it in the intro. But
Aoife,
Yeah.
before we dive deep into this transition, obviously we've hinted at it and we've got your story. We've had a lot of guests talk about identity, and obviously growing up, you've hinted at sport being pretty much who you were, competitive being who you were. How scary was it that transition from triathlon into something that is still a growing sport and still something that you're, you know, was it hard to let go? Was it hard to let go of a scholarship? Like mentally, what goes on in your head as a young athlete at that time? Because not to breeze over it, but I remember when I got my scholarship, it was the biggest thing in the world, and you know, to give that up, how did? Yeah, I suppose I just want to know how did you handle that, or did you just feel this and go, this is for me?
Yeah, so it was a massive deal. Like I said, having gotten the scholarship and finally got to a place where I had you know, professional coaches there working with me every day. I had all the facilities at my fingertips, was like Aoife's like dream come true. That was all I wanted growing up. And so I did the first year, and it just obviously balancing studying and sport it was not easy. I think I just whatever the year was extreme very difficult. I was exhausted. The environment I was in, didn't feel like I was thriving in that. And so by the end of I think it was a year and a half, I just knew that this wasn't what I wanted. Not that whatever I was experiencing at that time wasn't ultimately, it wasn't a quality of life I wanted. Whatever combination was going on, environment, schedule, coaches, all that, it just wasn't the right fit. And it wasn't that, it was hard to let go, I suppose, of it wasn't an easy, it wasn't an easy decision. Like anyone who knows me, I'm very, I just keep going until I just keep going. I don't give up. And this, like, I don't want to say that, like, leading that squad, it must, like, I just know, like, it would take a huge amount of probably, some type of pain, emotional pain, maybe, for me to do that. So I trusted myself. I didn't let go immediately. I did kind of go to some sessions. I spoke to the coach. He was very understanding. But ultimately, how I felt, it became about quality of life and how I felt when I started doing a different type of training. I couldn't say no to that. Like, how much joy I was getting from, like, to put it in context, like, I would go to those CrossFit classes in CrossFit Forth Valley in Scotland, do the 6 a.m. class, and all day I would literally find myself thinking about the session. Like, I just was on this, like, yeah, and looking back, like, I realized, okay, that's probably an indicator why I'm still doing this, but I would be going to, college, university and classes, and I just couldn't wait for the next day to go back and do another session. Or sometimes I went back and did the same class. Like, so I think looking back now, it makes sense why I enjoy Hyrox so much and why I let go of that scholarship, because my quality of life and of experience, it couldn't compare to what I had just found. I remember I did show up so when I went back for the second year, there, like I said, there's this 2 weeks where athletes on scholarship, they're settling in. It's still their off season. So during those 2 weeks, I had tried out this CrossFit gym, and I just didn't tell the coach on the tri squad. And so I didn't tell anyone. It was kind of like this little secret I had. And then I started going back on the squad. And all I could think, I remember being in the pool one morning, I was like, oh my gosh, all I want to do is be in that gym. And so the decision happened quite quickly then. And there was no way, like I said, the difference in my quality of life, my quality of experience training wise, I couldn't let that go. And so, and I knew, like, it didn't mean that I wouldn't go back to triathlon, and I did end up going back to it. But at that time, it's like, sometimes you just have to trust that, you can't look too far ahead, because if you look too far ahead, you'd be thinking, oh, I just gave up this Olympic dream because I just left that squad. But it was the feeling was too overwhelming to not go that route. So yeah, that's what happened.
Before we get right into Hyrox, you mentioned there you went back to it, and like, even as I think I have it here, last year you did the National Triathlon Sprint Championships, and you came fifth while you're concentrating Hyrox. So one, unbelievable, and clearly there's some crossover there in your training. When you were doing that event, did you get the love for the being in, the swimming through and the cycling and all the rest, or are you just like, I'm actually just enjoying this day, I can't wait to get back into Hyrox training again for the phenomenal things you've done that we're going to get into now in a second? How did you feel while doing that event?
So I actually just did that event. I wasn't focusing on triathlon. I just did it I'm still a member of Drogheda Triathlon Club. So just because I love the community, it's right beside where I live. So I actually wasn't I was just dipping in and out of I am a teacher, so I was off in the summer. and I was back swimming. I was just doing it to complement my own training. There was one day I was like, okay, so I can either do this really long Hyrox session or I can go and do that race, which is harder. And I was like, doing the race is going to be more painful, so I'll go and do that. And that was that race. And I think, yeah, like, and I knew there was crossover, between Hyrox training and triathlon. And I think there's a growing awareness of they're actually more similar, in my opinion, the training approach than CrossFit is to Hyrox.
Okay.
And yeah, like, well, it's more, I think that's why I'm leaning back more into the type of intensities that I would have been training at, in the zones. The percentage of zones, say 3 I'm training at, would be similar to what I was doing when I was focusing on tri. So yeah, but at the time, I that summer was last summer, and I just was dipping in and out. I had moved away from triathlon competitively, but I wanted to see could I do it, and where would I finish. And so yeah, I wasn't even swimming in a pool. I was just out in the open water maybe once a week. So it was a good enough result for that. And it's nice I like to keep in touch with that sport and that community, because it did so much for me, like I said, growing up. And they're just lovely people, and they've really supported me, yeah, in recent years. So it's nice to still see them and be involved.
But you're happy with that one, happy with that race. Let's get back into the gym now.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. No, and I had gone back when I moved home from university about 3 years ago. I actually did get fully back into triathlon, only for about, I think I only trained for like 5 months, or no, probably less, and then raced a summer, and actually was on the verge of getting back into, I was at the point where I could pursue that again. And I spoke to, again, Stephen Delaney, who was the performance director at the time for TI. And he said, I remember we were at the Dublin City Triathlon, and he said to me, we was in the middle of a crowd, we were just talking, he said, you could go at this again, you'd be able. And I remember saying to him, and this was before Hyrox, I said, I know, but there's something I'm looking for. There's something else I'm looking for. It's not CrossFit and it's not triathlon. I said that, and I said, I just can't settle. I'm just not sure. And I said I'd get back to him, because he offered, to help me out with coaching, and go, if I was to go that, totally apply myself again. And then shortly enough, I found Hyrox, and sure, that was the answer I was looking for.
And talk us through your first Hyrox event. I know you said in the training you knew you found something, but your first time doing a Hyrox event, when was that, and what was that like for you?
So my first Hyrox event was in Barcelona in 2024. So a year and 4 months ago, in November 2024. So less a year and 2 months ago. And yeah, I had 3 months of training, and I was just doing CrossFit classes and Hyrox classes. So, and I had just started my first job as a teacher, which was absolutely just crazy difficult at the time. So it was really just like, okay, what training can I get in? But I was really enjoying it. And anyway, got there, and I did the open category first. That was my first Hyrox race. And yeah, I still wasn't my body wasn't conditioned fully at the time for the movements. Like, I still felt a bit wobbly, like off balance on the wall balls. And I thought I was, doing really well at the time. I did win it, but the time, the time looking back wasn't amazing, but I won it, and I got the encouragement I needed to keep going, and the reassurance, I guess, that I could take a lot of time off at the time I did.
And you won this just off 3 months of training.
Yeah, it was 3 months, like August, September, October. Yeah, I joined the SKF at the end of August, And that race was in November. Yeah, the mid-November. So yeah. So in
SKF's
terms of stress,
membership applications have gone up dramatically since this last sentence. So they're gonna have to give us €1 million or send more details of how they trained you in 3 months to be the winner. But that is, did you think about that during the race, that you were in the lead? Did you know that you're doing really well? Because you just said you were unsteady, you were this, but obviously to win, are you getting a feel for where you are in the race during it?
so like when I joined the gym, I knew what I like. It wasn't like I was waltzing in there. Like I knew what I wanted, and I knew myself that if I'm going to do this, like I'm not going to half do it. And again, it's just my nature. And so I don't think people realize, like, when people don't know you, they probably just think that you're just taking part in the class. When my plan was always to keep progressing, and so I expected to do well in the race. I just went out like hammers, like I just blasted the first half of the race. That is not my strategy anymore. But at the time it was all I knew, and it's the only way, unfortunately, it's the only way I really knew how to race. And it's only now when I'm working with Megan Jacoby that we are totally revolutionizing my approach to training, to training and to racing. So I just went out and I blasted it, and I just led from now. Obviously Hyrox is done on a wave basis, so it's basically can become a time trial. And so there was actually a girl in my second wave that, yeah, I can't remember how far off she was from me. Or actually, I think I was pretty clear in Barcelona from a close second, but in Glasgow, a few months later, there was a girl very close in second in the next wave. So I was still learning at the time that you have to approach it as a time trial. So that was Barcelona in November.
I've heard you say it takes up to 5 races. You said 5 races or something, one of your posts, before you realize getting into the swing of things in Hyrox and how it went. How much different is it to racing something like a triathlon where you are well, in some cases side by side someone starting? Like what were the main things you learned over those 5, 6 races? Was it just pacing, or how you felt different stations, or what was it?
It was confidence in how to race Hyrox, and I'm still learning. Like every Hyrox I do, I finish it and I'm like, oh my gosh, like if I just did this and that. And it's like a feeling like you get when it's familiarization with your, yeah, what is going to work for you, how you're going to optimize yourself in this race format. And every Hyrox I do, it's like I have clarity on what to do next, and if I had just pushed there or held back there. And so I'm still learning that. And yeah, the 5 race rule, someone said that, a reliable source. I think all I remember is, okay, I think that person knows what they're talking about. I can't remember who it was, but I trusted the person. And yeah, like I think it's pretty true. It's a lot, although it's only like just over an hour of a race, it's a lot of pulling parts to it. And your race strategy is so important, more so than triathlon in my opinion, because there are less components to triathlon, and it's more, with triathlon you just kind of have to swim in a not in a straight line. But with Hyrox, there's so much more going on, and you do need to be far more clued into your paces, your times, your laps, your movements. So it's a far more complex race, and far more I think it's more intense than triathlon. Unless you're doing sprint triathlon, there's a good bit of crossover there, I think. But standard middle distance or Olympic distance triathlon, it's a far more, just running a straight line and cycling a straight line. When Hyrox, obviously, there's just so much going on at a very high intensity.
So you went from Barcelona, and I assume that was open category, and then you went
Yeah.
straight into pro because that was the first race. You want to see how you went for pro? You do a few more opens, or I'm assuming straight into pro. I want to jump ahead because you've a lot of flags, but one of them, well, flags that people don't know. A flag, you get top three position in the Hyrox, you get a flag, whereas in age category or overall. And Aoife's done a lot
Look
of
at
them
you with all the
overall.
lingo, Sean.
I
Look
do
at
my
you.
homework here. I do my homework.
So grown up.
Well, for me, it takes a lot longer than an hour to do a Hyrox, so I don't feel confident too much here. But I
I'm not
want to
gonna
talk
lie.
about you did Hyrox Pro Dublin last November, where
Yes,
you hit the
yes.
record for the Irish Hyrox female pro record and the time for that one. And I know you talked about it being a time trial, but am I right that saying you were going head to head with Lucy Proctor throughout that entire race, that you guys both started in the same wave?
Yes, we did. Yes. So that was not a time trial.
Yes, how was
We
that?
no. That was amazing. Like, I mean, actually, in terms of the race experience, I wasn't happy with it because by the time I got to the lunges, I felt I had no fight in me, and that was just concerning me a bit because that's not my usual self. So I was more concerned about that, like why didn't I have that fight when Lucy started? You know, we were battling it out, and I was just more so disappointed in myself. But I think there were reasons yeah, I've learned what to do next time, that won't happen again. And I really think being there all day, pretty much all morning, didn't help my mental freshness. And I will now make a point to only show up, you know, the 90 minutes or 2 hours before, because it's such a stimulating environment. It's crazy. Like everyone knows that, and the speakers, everything. And when you're racing at that like level and you're trying to break records or set new ones, and against, you know, athletes like Lucy, you need every percent. And yeah, so I think my plan was, I actually texted my coach at the time. I said, okay, I'm just going to try and hang on to her. And sure, then it just was, that was not the experience at all. I was up there, we were battling it out. I was very comfortable just up to that last point when my mind just, it wasn't even my body, my mind just, I didn't have that absolute fight that I usually have. And I think when I saw the time, I was like, I didn't expect to be getting those times at that point in this season. So that was still exciting, and to be up racing with Lucy, who I had never raced before, but you know, obviously knew of her, and her that she's a great athlete. So that was very reassuring at the same time.
When I hear about Hyrox in the gym and stuff, I hear when it's female Hyrox being talked about, Lucy's name is always mentioned up there. And just for people listening, because you didn't say the times, I will. Lucy won that one in an hour, 2 minutes and 57. And you say you lost it in the lunges when you still had another 1 kilometer and wall balls to go, but you were only like 25 seconds behind her, which means you were probably side by side in the wall balls or pretty close to her.
Yeah,
Going, how
yeah.
was that feeling of trying to burst through the wall balls, knowing she wasn't, because you must have seen her when you're doing the laps and stuff as well. Because with Dublin, the way the lap scheme works, you must have seen her maybe turning on a couple of straights or something. I don't know, or knew she was that close, and you're on that wall ball near her, not too sure what number she's on. Probably making sure everything is right for you to get your wall balls in order as well. Like, how was that feeling near the end?
So I actually, this is why I was so annoyed with the race experience, to be honest, because I thought she was further ahead than she was. And I know we all, I think, learned this the hard way, but really there was only about max 15 wall balls in it. And I thought there was more. I actually kind of thought that it was over, and it's terrible, and I will never make that mistake again. But again, it just, I wasn't fresh, and I wasn't just, you know, totally. Yeah, well, listen, I kind of bet myself up enough about it, so I won't let it happen again. But I didn't realize there was such little in it, and yeah, and now I've actually since then, I never, like, I think I never ever want to go through that experience that again, that race experience. So I've been training the 100 wall balls, like just hundreds, you know, 100 at a time after sessions, so that I can actually plan out that journey from 0 to 100, so that I've been there before. When at the time there in Dublin, I hadn't been practicing wall balls of, you know, in big chunks like that. So I wasn't confident in my ability really at the time to just blast
Go
them.
for it, yeah.
So, but you can train for that. And I have been now, and now I know, like, it's like, oh, every time you do 100 wall balls, you get to 30. Okay, we're at 30. Then I know I can get to 50. And you just kind of talk yourself through it. And now I know that, like, the pain at 60 is kind of the same pain at 70, or yeah, at 70. That's a kind of a crucial time when you can drop the ball. So it's just confidence again, and training, working with the right people, getting the right training, and gaining confidence to execute your race. And I just wasn't, it was my first race back after 6 months, 5 or 6 months. And it kind of felt like I was a new racing Hyrox for the first time again, to be honest.
In training with coaches and stuff like that, you've mentioned a few times. 'Cause I seen you were in Marseille last month doing a high rocks, and you talked about how your time wasn't as good, but you're more happy with it because you changed your training up. It's like Tiger Woods changing his backswing. You're like, oh my, you're so near the top. Why are you changing what you're doing to get there? Like before that event, for example, like I didn't even mention, the High Rocks doubles win you had in Poznan and all the rest, and that was an Irish record. You've got the Irish record for a pro record holder, and now you're talking about taking one step back to go two steps forward. What do you mean by that, and how much your training has changed for that event?
So I was basically, up until I started working with Megan Jacoby, one of the first things I said to her, and that was like, I'm with her like 2 months now. So one of the first things I said to her when we had our first call was, I don't think any program I've got, I don't think I've finished it a week, like in full. I never seem to be able to get through a week. And that's like, in my opinion, if you're really wanting to make it, to reach your potential, that's not good, because it's not, you're not getting encouragement from, it's just a sense of defeat when you constantly don't feel like you're getting through your sessions, and it's a bad cycle. And so one of the first things then she said to me, okay, well, your volume is wrong, your intensities are wrong, you're doing too much, and your volume is wrong. And when she said that, I was like, oh my gosh, that's it. And so we've been building up to a point where, to find how much my body can manage. And this is happening like at the minute. And so it's been really nice to, and it was actually scary at the start. I remember when I first started, like I wasn't going, I don't think I wasn't in zone 4 for like 3 weeks, and I was panicking a bit. And I was like, what? I was panicking. And now I know, like, now I feel most confident than I ever have. And this is 2 months into it. So I needed to trust, and I just wasn't used to trusting a coach, to be honest, probably from having so many coaches and changing sports. And but I'm really, yeah, I've never enjoyed the process of training, of learning about my schedules as much as I have now. And I just studied biology, so I'm very interested in the science behind, why certain training sessions are there, and everything's so intentional now, while before it wasn't like that.
Hmm. Like when you're practicing exercise like this for high rocks, it just seems like, well, it's a time trial. I have to do burpees as fast as I can. I have to do wall balls as fast as I
Yeah.
can. So why not always practice that? And like I know people who are training those type of classes, and they talk about flow pace, and doing EMOMs and pacing yourself through and keep the heart rate down. It's like, but on high rocks, it's go go go, and I have to practice going that hard. So it
Mm.
must be a hard mental shift to go. I'm assuming now you have like probably a one, maybe two high intensity sessions a
Mm.
week, if even, and then the rest of it is trying to balance that with your running and all the rest.
Yeah, so it was a whole shift, like it was like, again, revolutionizing my perspective on training, and on what it looked like to get the most out of yourself. Because I had gone from doing sessions, even running sessions, as just as hard as I can sustain, is what I would say, and I wasn't even working in zones, and she just got all that going, and I should have been at that long ago.
Hmm.
But it was a whole change. It was actually starting to work with science and just pure and on heart rate. And then it became like, because I'm definitely a perfectionist and I have to watch that, but it means now that instead of the focus of all my sessions being to like go as hard as I can, now my focus is how well can I execute this as this session is, how well can I execute this as it's intended. And that's fulfilling, because that could mean you have like a zone 3 workout, but you just executed it. You got your heart rate right, and you did exactly what that session said to do, and you tick it off. And even though you haven't just absolutely exhausted yourself, you still feel on track because you trust your coach, that and you just did exactly what you were supposed to do. And I wasn't, I never had this strategic attention to detail approach or trust. So it's all been, but yeah, at the beginning I was freaking out a bit, because I was kind of in my head like, I'm just about holding on to this, to some of these girls, while with the training I'm doing, and I'm going as flat out as I can. Like, what am I going to be at now? And it's the process though, and it's a build, and I'm definitely experiencing that now. And also, it was really strange to be hitting all my sessions. Like, I'm actually doing more training now, and the volume is higher, but it's at less intensity. And so for the first time in my life, I feel like I'm in a flow of my training. My body knows what to expect the next day. I'm not on this yo-yo, up, down, exhausted, pull out of a session because I'm in a state of absolute recovery. It's more constant, and I can tell that it's supportive of someone who wants to do this long term, as opposed to short term goals and just whack it out sessions. Yeah.
How did you find, and I suppose when we talk about volume, we've had people on who've done Ironman, ultramarathons. When it comes to volume in training in Hyrox, what does a day look like? So people have a perspective. Those who've never been in a CrossFit gym, like myself, I have an understanding of what happens in the event. I know the stages, but in terms of volume, what kind of volume are we looking at there? What would your day look like? Is it 2 a days, 1 a days, split days? What way do you work your training now?
So at the minute, like, I'm still, as I said, I'm only 2 months into this new training program, so we're still building. But at the minute, I'm looking at a few double days. So that could be, well, I think could be 3 or 4 double days, or it's probably 3 for sure double days, and then the rest are single days. Some are longer sessions. So say on a Thursday there, I had a 3/4 simulation. And in that case, I only train once, and that was on Thursday, because I'm also working full time. And so, yeah, it's a mixture of double days and single days at the minute. Yeah, and longer sessions on the days that I am only doing single days.
Aoife, I have a few people that I coach in the gym as a part of small group personal training, that I had the soundbite from you in terms of flow states and pulling back and stuff like that. And now they're after hearing double sessions. I'm like, oh, Aoife, what did you say to them? They're going to be like training twice a day all over and killing themselves again in the gym. But, and this next question is not going to help. You did the Nice World Championships last year. So, and I think it was fifth in the world now you are in your age category.
Yeah, I was fifth in my age group. Yeah.
Um, what's next?
What's next?
Yeah.
Now.
With that sense
Well,
behind, I just put you really high up there for that, but
well, like, next is I'm racing in 2 weeks, and I'm currently on the world rankings 22nd. So I need to get into the top 15 to get into the elite 15 races. And so my next, like I said, race is in Switzerland in 2 weeks. And if my goal is to get a time that will get me into the top 15 for the next elite 15 race, which is in March in Glasgow. So
oh
that's what's
wow.
next. And now how they work it is, to get into an elite 15 race, Hyrox world take your the average of your 2 fastest races within the last year. So basically, I just need to get another fast time like Dublin, or even faster, to get into the top 15. So that's what's next on my calendar. And then in the World Championships, I've qualified for the World Championships in the women's pro division, and I'll be wanting to win my age group there this year. I'll be looking for wanting overall placings as well. Like, I still to speak to Megan about what exactly, what she thinks that I'm able for, and we'll talk closer to the time when I'm further along this program with her. But like, I was 5th last year and I got a sled pull penalty, so definitely this year we'll be looking for a far better result.
Just for people listening, what's a sled pull penalty?
Sorry, sometimes I think that I'm speaking to Hyrox.
I have an idea. I'm assuming you stepped out so when you're doing a sled pull, you can only pull back.
Sorry.
Is it 1.8 meters? You can walk back with the rope, and then did you step too far?
Yeah.
Was that? And then what did they penalize you with for that?
So I had to pull an extra half length. So I think it was like 6 meters extra.
Whoa, that's big.
Now, I came out of that thinking I got off lightly, because it could have been a lot worse. Like, if you run, I think you can get far worse penalties, like, that have you out of the race. And I was still, I knew there was damage there. It definitely cost me a place, if not 2 places, that penalty. However, I honestly didn't dwell on it too much, because I had a very tumultuous preparation period leading up to that race. So I've never got broken down a bit after a race, and after that race I was just relieved to have got through it, to have got there. Even with the penalty, I thought, after what happened across the year, I got off lightly, so I kind of accepted it and knew that I just progress from there.
I don't know how to segue into this, but 250 kg in a sled, Aoife, is fucking phenomenal. I saw your training, how heavy you push a sled, and you're talking earlier about power and speed. I'm like, I'm going to hit her somehow segueing a 250 kg sled, but I know way to segue it in. I just want to bring that up there at the end. Aoife, has been absolutely phenomenal listening to you in the podcast and your Hyrox journey to now, and just seeing how far you're going and what you're doing with it. I'm sure people listening are definitely taking notes on how you approach your training and all the rest. It's been absolutely brilliant having you on.
Thank you. It was great to talk about the journey, and really enjoyed it. Thanks, guys.
And that's it for this week's episode of the Any Given Run Day podcast with myself, Aoife, and Eric. Take care.